All right, so as mentioned, welcome to our session on the Reviewers Workshop for NACRA. The agenda for today is to start with some introductions and then work through some detailed points of reviewing. So explaining a little bit about myself, I am Dr. Mike Annett. I am a professor at MacEwan University. And one of my roles with NACRA is the Vice President of Programs and the 2025 Conference Chair.
I'm Clinton Daniel. I'm faculty at the University of South Florida.
About our overview for today, the first couple points, a conference overview, cases writing 101, and why review. And then the sections 4 and 5 will take the bulk of our time, where we'll go into more detail about reviewing. And then we'll do a little bit of conversation on reviewing for roundtables when you're at the conference. Now, a little bit about NACRA, as many of you are new to NACRA. We are a global organization. Certainly, a high proportion of the members are based in North America, particularly in America, but we do have representation and connections from around the world. Over 30 countries are represented in our membership list. And this is a very collaborative group focusing on development and community. These are very important to us that, yes, we have quality, yes, we have high standards, and yes, we want to bring everybody up to a great level of case writing and case reviewing. And that means developing from novice and rookie case writers and authors to intermediate to expert. And you'll find all of that at the conference in our community. And no matter where you are on that journey, you are welcome and encouraged. And the annual conference is the main thing that NACRA does each year. And at our conference, the central point is the roundtables. I'll share a picture in a moment, but it is, as it suggests, 6 to 8 people sitting around a round table discussing cases. So the idea here again is conversation, constructive input, and relationship and community. We have a range of topics at the conference, just to name a few of the 9 discipline tracks. We also have several different formats, which includes the startup track, which is very short cases at very early stages of development. We have the traditional track, the disciplines I'd mentioned. We have a pedagogy and research track where we talk more about what is case teaching about? How do we know that case teaching is effective? If we need to argue and advance the pedagogy of case teaching, how might we do that? Or as we might explore the case method as a research approach, how do we do that? So we have a track for that. And we have the new view sessions, which are more of your typical seminar lecture and advance awareness on emerging topics. We also have some strategic partnerships as an association, and these are working to advance the case community. And we're collaborating on initiatives such as the impact of cases in the 10-year and promotion decision, or understanding the influence of regional or cultural elements on case writing and teaching, and exploring theoretical contributions based in case research. So with our strategic partners in America and around the world, we are proudly working to advance the case community and issues within the community. And last I'll mention here is the Case Research Journal, which is a top-rated, the preeminent case journal for teaching cases, And you should feel comfortable after coming through the conference and the roundtable sessions to put in a submission to the Case Research Journal. You'll hear more about it at the conference, but if you're not coming, just a quick FYI, that it is development-oriented, but very quality-oriented. And if you're looking to publish your cases, I can think of no better place for you to publish. It is distributed through Harvard Business and through Ivy, and is very well received in our community. We have several meeting rooms that are booked. I think we have 14 in total, including the ballroom and some breakout rooms. And as you might see in the bottom left and top left is more of the ballroom type picture. The new views would be in the center type room. And then I'll show you a picture here of the round table. Again, these type of tables, discussions for the main part of the conference. And please remember, as a development-oriented group, we are trying to give constructive feedback to our fellow authors and help them to improve their case. Over the July 16th to September 15th period, authors, including yourselves, may be making revisions to your work. Even if you have a straight accept decision, you're welcome to fine-tune, as you may have new ideas or inspirations, and you can certainly do that. But you'll need to share your final copy with the chair August 31st, so we can again combine our final program. More instructions on that will come from your chair.
Case writing 101, why do we write cases? And what are the different types of cases? We see these cases as a pedagogical contribution. NACRA, the conference, focuses on decision cases, which can be used as a point of discussion or teaching in the classroom. So we see them strongly as a pedagogical tool. We also find in our instructor's manual, we have a great deal of emphasis. If many of you may not have experienced an instructor's manual while submitting a case to either a conference or to a journal, NACRA is a huge advocate for the teaching manual, whereby you are pressed to provide your theoretical linkages and how the intellectual contribution of the case, essentially the phenomenon that's found within the case, can be argued or defended. And then we strongly look for cases to engage with industry. The NACRA conference has allowed secondary cases in the past. We do strongly encourage a real company, real circumstance. We understand that there's some things you may not be able to disclose, or you may have to disguise some things, but we look at cases as an opportunity to engage with industry so that we get relevance as well as the rigor to the case. The customary elements that you see in this, we have, in the case, you have they're almost like two exclusive but work together documents. They're equally valuable. The insight that we provide as feedback from NACRA. So we want you to develop not only your case, but we want you to be able to develop your instructor's manual. So the case, we typically see an opener background so that it relates to the issue and opportunity that there is in the case. We like to see a narrative that brings back a closure, and then the exhibits are very important as they inform the protagonist in the case in making a decision if you have a decision case. The instructor's manual, there are several resources that are out there that NACRA provides that have been published through the CRJ that give you a good idea of what makes a really good instructor's manual and what we like to see for learning objectives, what is best practices, and those resources can be found at the NACRA website. Generally speaking, you see these bullets here where you have the synopsis, where it's just a brief summary of the case. It is very important for us to understand what courses that this case can be used in and at what level is appropriate for the case. So while this case may be introductory for undergraduates, or it may be more applicable to an executive graduate program, it's not applicable or digestible by an undergraduate that's 21 years old with no industry experience. So that's real important. Research methodology is very important. We like to know how you collected your data, interviews, what exactly did you do, and then how it links to theory, and then guidance on teaching your case. If you develop your instructor's manual at the conference, we find that instructors do use the instructor's manual a lot more than what I thought, and because they really want guidance on how to teach their case. And so we value the structure of that. And then there's a Q&A. How are you going to engage with the classroom, with your students? And then if you can provide an epilogue, what would be some references toward that? And those are sort of the case writing 101. Okay, so you as a reviewer, why would you want to be a reviewer? And this is important not just if this is your first time participating in the NACRA conference, but in the future, if you're trying to recruit other reviewers, after you've gone through our process that Mike has already outlined, where he talked about the roundtable and the different stages, the early stage where you're given the case, how do you review it? What are you looking for? Some of those bullets that I've outlined there. Trying to get colleagues to review the case before you submit is always a great idea. Anytime you can do some proofreading and get support with that, this conference is also a great opportunity for that, right? So everybody that participates within a track should become a reviewer, or at some point are involved in the reviewing process. If that's not initially, it certainly would be at the conference itself. We often consider NACRA to be a working conference, and a lot of the reason why we define it that way is because of your review process. And so what we're trying to do is provide a tremendous amount of support towards the author and towards you as a reviewer. You get to know, as you review these cases, you start to see, it comes together after you've reviewed 2, 3, 4, 5 or more of these things, right? You start to see a lot of patterns of what makes a good case and where people are struggling in their cases, right? And it also, the way that the system is set up, you begin to develop a record of service towards reviewing, and we can see that. And it adds value, right? So the more cases that you review, the more valuable you are to the conference, and perhaps the more valuable you could be to a journal to review cases to editors that are looking for quality reviewers in cases. And then you'll find that NACRA is a supportive community. It's all about growing the case method. It's about interfacing with different communities globally throughout the world. So it's very community driven. It's a very positive atmosphere of the NACRA conference, and you can develop relationships and networks. And you often find it's not uncommon that the more you participate in in the NACRA conference, that you become a collaborator with someone else in writing a case. So for instance, Mike is writing a case. He's looking for someone to help him out, be a co-author. What a great opportunity if him and I have a common interest in some sort of domain. Now we can merge together and write a case together, bring our experiences together, and bring more quality to the community.
We've now set the stage a bit about what cases are, why we might write them, and common elements to them. I'll talk a bit now about the pipeline stages. The first stage, as I would call it, is step one is the review, and that's by the author themselves prior to submission. They've looked at the conference requirements, they've looked at the eligibility of cases, the type of cases, a startup or a roundtable, or the pedagogy, and looking at, if it's a full case, at the track and the basic formatting requirements that have been listed on the website. So that could be a step 0. I've called it review step 1, but there's that first kind of self-review. And to overcome some of the curse of knowledge from the previous slide, or where you know things, but maybe it hasn't happened to you, but for me, I forget to tell my class or forget to write it because I know it, right? And now we're moving past the self-review into the conference submission review. And the idea here is to get the case ready for the round table. So it's a very basic type of review. I've done the first version of it, step A. I look at the documents, make sure that they're complete, make sure that both, for the full cases, for example, are present, both the case and the instructor's manual portion. Make sure that the footers are in the right place and with the right information. And so very, very basic things as the conference chair. And as peer reviewers, you're going to learn in a few more minutes more of what's asked of you in this first stage or the second stage of submission review. Now, after we go through the submission review, there's step 3. And step 3 is really at the round table where you're discussing and giving comments. And in this level, you may be more explaining things that you're wrestling with, or being able to provide insights and suggestions, and even more detailed feedback. And at the end of today's session, I'll share a couple checklists with you that might guide that kind of conversation. And then review step number 4 would be after the conference. You're wanting to take it forward to publication, possibly with CRJ or possibly somewhere else. And there you'll be looking at the actual journal requirements, looking at meeting their level of standards of quality, or whether you're making a particular contribution to the field. You'll be looking at the journal's unique requirements for their publication. Everyone has a slightly different format. And our conference, particularly for the CRJ journal, should get you ready for that level of review. So we're going to focus mostly on review 2, the conference submission, but do think that if you're attending the conference, that you will be also doing review 3, the conference roundtable. I have a couple ideas for you in general about reviewing submissions that will be helpful to you as you do step 2, the conference submission, and step 3, the roundtable discussion. Now, when we're doing the reviews, you're often wanting to look at typos and information gaps. You're wanting to make sure that there is clarity, accuracy, and completeness. So this might be things around proofreading, checking for missing context, and asking yourself, would a reader unfamiliar with a case understand the full picture? So that will help you think about one of the main objectives of the review. The second is alignment, and is it sensical? So that means ensuring the case study is coherent, that's logically structured, and that's aligned with its stated goals. And the third large objective, being suitable for roundtable discussion, particularly for the conference, is ensure that the case study invites meaningful dialogue and reflection. Is there discussion potential? Is it relevant? Is there balance between the different perspectives in the case, or is it slanted to just one side? So in order to help you achieve those objectives, a bit of a process or a recipe that you could use to set yourself up for giving a quality review is in the 11 points below. And I'll just be very brief to highlight them. But you do want to start by rereading or reading for the first time the review form. You should know what you're going to be asked to rate on and comment on before you start your review process. So get that in mind. And then read the case's introduction and closing. This is to grasp the case's scope and intended takeaway. Then shift to the instructor's manual and read the synopsis and the learning objectives to understand the teaching intent. And as we showed on that earlier slide, the IM and the case report being side by side, they really do, case writing suggestions as you do them kind of in parallel. And as you're reviewing then, to do them in parallel to make sure that they are making sense as you go through them. Now, return back to the full case as if you were a student. And the point here is to experience the case from a learner's perspective, not from authority reviewer perspective. But if somebody were coming into this as a student, what would this case read like and feel like? And you could ask yourself, is it engaging, confusing? Is it realistic? And then return to the instructor's manual and read the discussion questions. So evaluate the prompts then they're coming up for the classroom use. Are the questions open-ended and thought-provoking? Do they connect to the learning objectives? And then try to answer the questions yourself, right? Test the case's depth and discussion potential. The traditional way, and the way that CRJ promotes for the case writing and the discussion, is that all of the answers that students should need should be embedded within the case itself. Now, that doesn't mean that the instructor is not needing to provide some theory or model guidance, but the facts and figures that they need to make sense of need to be in the case report. And earlier when I mentioned the curse of knowledge, this is one of the places where it shows up, is the author knows the answer. Or you as an instructor might know the answer, but is the actual answer in the case available to the student that doesn't have the benefit of your knowledge and experience? Then read the full instructor's manual, right? Go through it one more time, just like you've done with the full case, and assess the teaching guidance. Is it clear? Is it complete? Is it practical? Does it offer insights and not just answers? Read the case one more time, this time now revisiting it with a critical lens, because you have seen it in full from the student perspective and the ability to answer questions. Now come back to it. Is this really making sense? Then prepare your review. You prepare your ratings and draft thoughtful and constructive feedback. Helpful is to cite examples from the text and highlighting strengths and suggesting improvements. Then take a break. Whether it's a 5-minute walk around the block, a cup of tea or coffee, or even to the next day. But come back after you've had a chance to settle your mind, and then finalize your review. Submit a polished professional review. Make sure you proofread your comments, and ensure that your feedback is respectful, actionable, and aligned with the review form. So again, that is the overview for any reviewing task you take, whether it's submission, the roundtable, reviewing for another journal, reviewing for a friend. This would be a good process to follow. And I point out the table on the top right of the screen, shared by one of our colleagues, Maria Ballesteros-Sola and Michael Goldman. And when we talk about alignment, these are key areas where we often find authors write without alignment, that there's not a connection between the learning objectives, some of the key concepts, some of the discussion questions, and then the key readings and resources. And so preparing a table like this as an author or as a reviewer will help you spot gaps in alignment and where there's misalignment that you can help the author get through. Now, for our conference, reviewing submissions, the first point to share here is that there are several people involved in the review process. There is the chair who is reading the case and 2 reviewers. And I share that point because when you get to the decision, not to feel the weight of the world on you that you're making the full accept or decline decision, right? There are a couple perspectives involved. And so feel like you're contributing into the conversation, not making the full decision. The chair will make that decision. There are opportunities for ratings, and I'll walk you through the form shortly, and opportunities for comments. And as you think about the comments, please recall our objectives, which is to help cases and case authors develop by providing appropriate and constructive comments. And while it may seem unnecessary to indicate that reviewers at this stage should be kind and polite, right? Why would you not be? Two reasons for pointing it out here again is it is an ethos of our community, and saying it repeatedly helps to entrench it and especially helps flag it for our newcomers. And maybe speaking from my perspective only, it can be easy to get swept up in a review, particularly one that might take a different approach than I would. And the cognitive dissonance from it can sometimes leak into your review and can sometimes appear in abrupt wordings. And so as you go back through your comments, just review. Is this constructive? Is this kind? And please remember that there are a range of authors in the track. As NACRA continues to expand its global connections, there are many more authors that are using English as their additional language. And I'll tell you, as a unilingual native English speaker myself, I am continually in awe of people that can write an academic level in multiple languages. And so please, again, appreciate the audience that you're reviewing, the author you're reviewing, may have English as an additional language. And again, correcting proofreading can be quite helpful, but doing it kindly is necessary. Moving on to the decisions, just want to point out that there are 3 decision options: accept, revise, and resubmit, and reject. And only reject is the negative answer, right? The chair is still making the decision, but that's the one where you're saying, this case, there's not really a path forward for it to become one that is ready for discussion at the conference table. And there will be some of those. But if it is an accept decision or a revise and resubmit decision, you're effectively saying this case is or can get to a place where it's warranting a half-hour discussion at a round table. So if you get the accept or revise and resubmit, that person is effectively coming to the conference. We also have a couple awards, and you'll be asked to give comment on the awards. So I'll share these categories for you. Their awards are for best case, and there'll be a gold, silver, or bronze level of those. There are some category awards where there's for the best student-authored case, the best ethics case, the K. Guest Memorial Award, the best newcomer case, and the Ruth Green Award. And lastly here, the Pedagogy Track Award. Now, I won't read the descriptions for you. They're on the screen. You can follow the link to read more about it. But we want to recognize and honor high-level contributions. And as a reviewer, please keep in mind and express if the case you're reviewing meets these criteria and is a high level. There's one more I didn't mention here is language tracks, and that all non-English language tracks, as long as there are 4 submissions in that track, can be eligible for an award as well for the different languages. So it feels like a lot of setup. Talking about what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? Generally, how do you get to it in the recipe? So let's get right into what it will be for your review form. First on the screen here is what an email text should look like for you. This is one I sent to myself for review. So you just simply click the link to go into the review. And then I've got a link for the review form that I'll bring up here in larger format of what you'll be asked to complete. Now, I have a couple large categories that I'll say out loud, and then perhaps you'll see them as we scroll through the screen. But the rating scale questions fall into classroom usage. They fall into alignment between the case and instructor's manual. They address overall quality and readiness for the conference. In that first category, the classroom usage, a couple other breakdowns. Is there a clear problem? Is there good utility or value? Is it well developed? Is it complete? And does it support the question and answer? Now, as I go through, I'll simply scroll through. I won't read all the sections for you, but keep in mind, these are now the type of things that you're asked to look at. I will speak the first one. The case is based on a real situation. Oh, sorry, not that one. I meant the second one. The case is focused on a decision, problem, issue, or process. The case research journal, and where we're hoping to drive cases from the conference to, is only focused on decisions. There must be a clear decision in the case. But for the conference, knowing that authors may be developing their case for classroom use, publication in other journals, use on their own tests, that we accept the ones that have a focus on a problem, issue, or process. So when Clinton talked about the information or description type case, or an analysis or evaluative type case, those are welcome at the conference. You may not see many of them, but if you do see one, don't rate it out, right? That's not the intention. Simply comment whether it's focused on one of those items, right? And you agree to strongly disagree. Now, moving the others, you recall the categories I talked about: classroom usage, the alignment between the case and the IM, overall quality, and whether it's ready for the conference. You'll be making those ratings on the agree to strongly disagree level. And again, you'll have this available for you in Scholastica, but scrolling it slowly on the screen just give you a chance just to quickly read along with me. And this bottom one here, again, the case instructor's manual sufficiently developed to benefit from the conference experience, and a case should be considered for an award. And again, these bottom two, the awarding and honoring great contributions, the second last one, benefiting from the conference. Now, after the ratings, there is a couple open area comments. You'll see that they're all noted, intended for the author. So suggestions to improve the case, suggestions to improve the manual, and other general comments. My tip here is to number your comments, be sure they're actionable, as that helps the authors have clear directions for improvements. Giving vague feedback isn't really helpful, so a couple clear points is most beneficial. And then it'll be an overall rating score you can provide, and the recommendation you give of accept, reject, or revise and resubmit. You'll also see there is a section for comments for the editor, and that is your chance to give any confidential information you think is necessary or helpful. Let's talk about reviewing for the roundtables. So I won't read this for you. You can scan quickly. But if you're thinking, what do I do now for the roundtable review in that month period? Follow the recipe, and then think of comments along these type of items for the case checklist, looking at the title, the introduction to the hook, the content, clarity and style, and the exhibits and references for the case. And then for the instructor's manual, again, comments for the synopsis, the intended learning courses, the learning objectives, and the research methods. And I appreciate these checklists being shared to me by veteran case author Maria Ballesteros-Sola from California State University, Channel Islands.
Something else that came up, Mike, that I answered, but I thought maybe you could elaborate a little bit. For cases that are not ready, right? So the author has submitted to the conference, generally speaking, there's negative feedback on the development of the paper. It's more or less rejected. As track chairs, what we try to do is encourage that to our startup case track, right? A developmental, do you want to talk maybe just a couple seconds on that process we typically like to do in the conference?
Yeah, thank you very much. And Clinton, I appreciate you flagging it for me. So although somebody may have given into a full case track, it may not be suitable or ready for the conference presentation. And the chair can redirect that case over to our startup track. Now, separate from the full case, people may have submitted to the startup track already. And in that case, I think we had 26 authors submit that have said, I have an idea for a case. I'm able to give a 1 or 2 page overview of where I want it to go, but I need some more assistance in working it through. And at the conference, there'll be a 2 or 3 hour session where those startup track submitters or people redirected over will sit with a mentor for about 20 minutes, and they'll talk through the case and the opportunities for improvement, suggestions on what might be changed to get it ready. So if you have a full case, but it's not quite ready, you can always get that little mentorship, still participate in the conference, and still grow from the conference. So thank you for that question.